By the time the truck stopped rolling, the smell had already reached them. Not gunfire. Not smoke. Something older. Something that had been settling into the soil for months. April 4, 1945. The Thuringia region of central Germany. The 4th Armored Division pressed forward through a silence that felt wrong. Villages emptied. Roads abandoned. And ahead, a set of gates that no one back home had ever heard of. They were called Ohrdruf. And within the next few hours, nothing any of these men believed about the war would survive intact. I remember the quiet more than anything. We'd been trained for noise. Incoming fire. Orders. Chaos. But this was different. The quiet here had weight to it. You didn't want to move too fast. Like you were walking into something that had already happened. What they were approaching was not a battlefield. It was a system. And systems like this one don't announce themselves. They let the evidence do the talking. 30 bodies lay scattered near the entrance to the living quarters. Still warm. Steam rising faintly from the ground beneath them in the cold morning air. The SS had been gone less than an hour. But before we go any further, I want to hear from the keepers of these memories. Do you carry a family connection to this era, or is there a silent battlefield you've visited that stayed with you? Drop a comment. Your personal history is what keeps these archives breathing. If you're here to help us grow this community into a stronghold for the truth, hit the like button and subscribe with the bell on. It ensures these untold stories never fade into silence. And if you know someone who values the weight of history as much as we do, share this with them. It's how we ensure the record survives. To understand what April 4th revealed, you have to go back to November 1944. That was when the Third Reich established Ohrdruf, a subcamp of the Buchenwald complex, positioned alongside a quiet town of the same name in the heart of Thuringia. From the outside, it looked like a construction project. That was the point. Inside, it functioned as a forced labor operation tied to one of the Reich's most closely guarded ambitions. Prisoners, tens of thousands of them, were driven into the Jonastal Mountains to dig tunnel systems. A communications hub buried beneath Amtgaren Castle. A strategic rail network threading through the rock. Some documents point to a deeper purpose, that these tunnels were being prepared as test infrastructure for weapons the Reich was desperately trying to develop in its final months. The prisoners doing the digging were never meant to speak about what they built. 14 hours a day underground. In the dark. With barely enough to keep your hands moving. You stopped thinking about getting out. You just focused on the next hour. Then the next. That was by design. Ohrdruf was not a detention facility in any recognizable sense. It was an attrition system. The labor was meant to consume. The conditions were calibrated not to sustain life but to extract maximum output before the body failed. And when the body failed, it was replaced. By the end of 1944, roughly 10,000 prisoners were held inside. Within weeks, that number doubled to 20,000. They were housed in collapsed horse stables, improvised sheds, and canvas tents in a European winter. Rotting straw instead of bunks. No sanitation. No medical support. The SS personnel transferred in from Auschwitz brought with them the full weight of what that name implies, a methodology of systematic cruelty that had been refined over years. Death here did not require a chamber. It arrived through starvation, through cold, through labor, and through the absolute indifference of men who had long since stopped seeing human beings when they looked at the people in their custody. By late March 1945, the sound of Allied artillery could be heard in the distance. The Reich's grip on Thuringia was slipping. And inside Ohrdruf, the SS began the work of erasure. It was systematic. And it was brutal. Approximately 1,000 prisoners were forced onto evacuation routes. Those who could not keep pace did not survive the encounter. The sentence was carried out roadside, without ceremony, without record. And those who were left behind, they knew what was coming. Not liberation. Not yet. There was still time for one more thing. What followed was the Reich's final attempt to make Ohrdruf disappear. Not the place. The evidence. Inside the camp, the SS constructed what survivors would later describe as iron grills, sections of railway track laid across brick foundations, stacked high with the remains of those who had perished in the preceding months. Tar was poured. Pinewood and coal ignited the pyre. This was not an isolated act. It was part of a coordinated effort across multiple sites to eliminate physical evidence of what had occurred. The Reich understood, even in collapse, that what had been done here could not survive the light. But they ran out of time. When the 4th Armored and 89th Infantry Divisions came through those gates on the morning of April 4th, the grills were still warm. Beneath them, bone, ash, the unmistakable remains of human beings reduced to evidence of a crime. The camp was abandoned. Except for the dead. There were far too many of those to erase in time. 8 days later, on April 12, 1945, Dwight D. Eisenhower, George S. Patton, and Omar Bradley walked through Ohrdruf together. Eisenhower had crossed North Africa. He had planned the invasion of Europe. He had been present for some of the defining brutality of the 20th century. He had never seen anything like this. You could tell from the way they moved. These were men who had given orders that sent hundreds of thousands into fire. And they were quiet. Just quiet. Eisenhower understood immediately what this place was, not just as a crime scene but as a historical argument. He ordered documentation, photographs, sworn testimony. He had already anticipated that without records, denial would follow. He was right. Patton, a man whose battlefield reputation was built on absolute composure under pressure, refused to enter one of the barracks. Inside, naked bodies had been stacked from floor to ceiling. The lime powder the departing guards had used to slow decomposition had done nothing to diminish what lay beneath it. He stepped back. Said he would not be able to hold himself together if he went further. That hit harder than almost anything. Patton. Of all people. And he couldn't walk through that door. What they witnessed in those barracks was approximately 40 bodies per room, in structures that had held up to 200. Stripped. Discarded. What Ohrdruf revealed was not just the capacity for violence. It was the bureaucratic normalization of it. The filing away of human beings as an administrative matter. The rage that followed the liberation of Ohrdruf did not remain contained. Several SS personnel who had not fled in time were located, some in hiding, some attempting to blend into the surrounding area. The restraint that military protocol demands collapsed under the weight of what these soldiers had just walked through. What occurred in those hours exists in a contested space within the historical record, a place where the documented rules of engagement met documented evidence of crimes so vast they defied the categories those rules were built around. Historians continue to examine the events of April 4th and the days that followed as a case study in how atrocity reshapes the behavior of those who witness it. Nobody talked about it afterward. Not really. You just carried it. And that silence became its own kind of testimony. The men who walked through Ohrdruf largely did not speak about what they saw for decades. When they did, the accounts were consistent. Not embellished. Just there. Unchanged by time, because certain things do not soften. Today, the physical traces of Ohrdruf are almost nothing. Rusted bunkers. Overgrown ground. A region that looks like any other corner of central Germany. 7,000 lives documented. 3,000 of those in the first months of 1945 alone. And a question Eisenhower had already anticipated before he left the grounds that April afternoon. What happens when the people who were there are gone? That is not a historical question. It is a present one. Which is why we're still here. Still talking. Ohrdruf was not the largest camp. It was not the most well-known. But it was the first. The first time American soldiers walked into the mechanism of the Reich's genocide with their own eyes open. And what they saw there shaped every decision made at Nuremberg. Every photograph taken. Every record preserved. The silence of those tunnels did not last. And it must not. This wasn't the end of what the Allies found as they pushed east. The next story goes deeper, and the evidence gets harder to ignore.